Executive editor of the Austin American-Statesman. Hear me now? They're still saying need a little louder. Okay. All right. I'm still John Bridges, the executive editor of the American-Statesman. Thank you for being here with us tonight. We at the Statesman and our partners at KVUE are pleased to present this community forum, which builds off the reporting of Tony Plahetsky, who works for both the Statesman and KVUE, into this important topic that clearly is of interest to residents of the Hill Country, those of us who just are fortunate to drive through occasionally and enjoy this great place. So I am going to introduce Terry Gruca, who's an anchor for KVUE. And I'd also like to take a second to encourage you to support community journalism, which we do at the Statesman. KVUE does as well. You can read the Statesman version of the report, The World Rocked, right here. We have copies up front. You'll get to see some pieces of video from both KVUE and the Statesman. And you can also find the full reports online at Statesman and KVUE.com. So, Terry Gruca of KVUE is our moderator. So, Terry.
Thank you, John. Thank you all. Good evening. How is everyone? So I do more than drive through the Hill Country. I live here. I moved my family here to Marble Falls last summer. So this is a topic that hits close to home. In fact, my neighbor is in the rock quarry industry, and so I did a lot of research before moving here and putting my family into this. So this is a topic that I know all of you are concerned about, and I think anyone who loves this place, whether you're visiting or whether you choose to make this home, wants addressed. And so thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us here and to share your questions. If you did not get a chance to write a question down, please do. There are pieces of paper in the back, and they'll be handing me some of those questions so we can ask the panelists. Without further ado, we'd like to start by showing the story that Tony did on our air at KVUE, just to kind of lay the groundwork for why this is such an important topic for the Hill Country. Take a look.
This has always been our dream. Come on. When Gwen and I were super young, when I'd have breaks from the fire department, we'd take the car and come out and do the Hill Country Drive. Just fell in love with this whole area. This pasture had what they call the $1 million view. There's just so much history here, and it's beautiful.
For more than 2 decades, Kevin Baum lived in the center of crisis. He started his career in public service as an Austin firefighter, rose through the ranks to acting chief.
I left the city, retired young at age 42.
After retirement, he came here to the Texas Hill Country, one of the most peaceful and treasured parts of the state.
So our dream was always to move to the Hill Country, kind of live that slower paced life.
He and his wife Gwen started a small ranch on 12 acres.
And moving to the Hill Country, you're moving away from all of the hustle and bustle of city life.
In many ways, it's his own piece of paradise. In others, he's living right in the middle of an industrial storm.
We're listening to blasting, the backed up alarms on the truck beep, all hours, day and night, and we're surrounded by stone crushers. They've literally destroyed the tranquility of the space.
Up to 1,500 new residents are pouring into Texas every day. Limestone and other minerals are necessary to build everything from houses to highways. The result? The number of registered quarries and rock production facilities in Texas has multiplied nearly 20 times since 2012.
It's direct correlation with population and expansion and the need for natural resources to support that growth.
Jill Shackelford converted this land in Hays County from a cattle ranch to a quarry in 2011. Here, like at a typical quarry, workers blast several feet down, loosening rock that is then ground into large stockpiles before it is sold to construction companies in Texas and beyond. We crunched state data and found that in 2012 there were 52 registered rock mining operations across the state. Now there are more than 900, many of them controversial quarries. To the north in Williamson County, there are 34 total, more than any other county in the state. And to the west in Burnett County, there are 16 total, more than any other hill country county. In many places, quarry operations and property owners quietly coexist, but in others it's becoming a battleground between dream homes and a multi-billion-dollar business. A 6-month KVUE Defenders investigation has found the industry's growth is outpacing oversight. Quarries face no extensive application process other than permits for certain things like rock crushing equipment. But calculations for those permits about the impacts of the environment are done by the applicant and not the state. The state also hasn't studied the impacts of multiple quarries clustered together. And finally, Texas has no law requiring a quarry operator to restore the land, allowing them to mine, then walk away. Shackelford, now an industry consultant, encourages quarry operators to work with neighbors for common good.
Communicating your blasting schedule if you're blasting, being a resource for the community as far as sponsoring school events and anything that's going on, and just having an open door policy with your neighbors to approach you if they see anything that concerns them.
But others say some operators, including national and international companies moving to Texas, are taking advantage of the state's pro-business culture and lax oversight.
There has to be balance.
State Representative Terry Wilson, a Republican whose district includes Burnett and Williamson counties, says Texas must do more to protect some of the state's most cherished land.
What we'll be looking to do is look to solution sets that doesn't jeopardize the industry while providing public safety and economic development to our communities.
Industry leaders say they are, in fact, tightly regulated by more than a dozen federal, state, and local government agencies. David Perkins is president of the Texas Aggregates and Concrete Association.
The standards that are in place that the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality has are intended to be protective of human health and the environment. And so obviously if an applicant meets those requirements, they're going to be ensuring that those that are around their operations are not being adversely affected.
Industry leaders say their work is critical to the state's long-term success, a major driver of jobs for the communities around them, and pumping nearly $5 billion to the state's economy. But Baum says he and his neighbors are paying.
This is going into our lungs, and I can almost guarantee you we're going to see silica in it, which is a very dangerous and carcinogenic aerosol from quarry operations. This is what we breathe.
And there's increased big rig traffic along Highway 281 between Burnett and Marble Falls.
Right now there doesn't seem to be a 50-yard line. There just seems to be an end zone, and over there in the end zone is the corporations in the state. And out here, playing around in the dust is the rest of us who are trying to find out, are we safe?
Baum is now one of several residents taking the lead on pressing lawmakers to study what the industry is doing to the environment, their health, and the hill country itself.
And they're going to keep pushing that envelope until somebody finally says stop. It's the state's job to say stop.
Now, instead of natural beauty, he sees what he fears is a travesty in the making.
They're not just stealing our quality of life, they're stealing our dreams. Because everybody that lives out here is retired or semi-retired. They work their whole life, right, amassing enough money so that they can build their forever home out here. And these guys are stealing that dream from us.
The rise in quarries is leading to some major clashes among hill country towns and the industry. Tomorrow night we'll take you to some of those towns and inside their fights. Tony Plahetsky, KVUE News.
So obviously that is one part of a 3-part series that Tony did with us. So if you did not get a chance to see all 3 parts, you can still see them on KVUE.com. We still have those in our Defender section. Hello? It's on. The green's on. Can you hear me now? Sorry. That's the first of 3-part series that Tony did for KVUE, and you can still find that on KVUE.com. I also want to take the time, Tony worked many months on this. He's one of the best reporters we have here in this area, and so kudos to him for taking the time to really make sure all sides are represented in stories like this, because it's important. This next video is the work of statesman, photojournalist Anna Ramirez. he's also good people. I get to work with him. So, this next video is the work of statesman photojournalist Anna Ramirez along with Tony, and it captures how rock mining and hill country owners are intersecting and, in some people would even say, colliding.
Dad was a consummate farmer. Whenever he traveled, he would stop, crawl the fence, and pick up a handful of plowed dirt and smell it, look up with a faraway look in his eye. The land was important to him, and he taught us to appreciate it, use it, and make it better. I made a decision about mid-career that I would settle in the area I grew up in. I came back in 2010. You could see the growth starting to take place. Subdivisions would pop up in 3 to 4 months on roads that were wide open pastures or fields when we were kids.
My wife and I have always dreamed of living in Texas Hill Country. There's so much that it has to offer. These homes represent the greatest storage of value that most of us who live up here have. And meanwhile, we're getting surrounded by these earth-eating monsters. We knew that the Texas Hill Country was rich with natural resources and that ground was being mined. We had no idea the extent of it, and we had no way to predict the future. These rocks that they have going up those bands, and then it drops into the crusher and it just crushes them, and that's how they make the aggregate for the roads.
A lot of people move out here because the peace and quiet of being out away from the city.
The trees and vegetation are incredible. There's several tiers of lakes.
I like the culture, the neighbors, rugged, hard-headed individuals who do not take no or failure for an answer.
If you live out here and you're living daily with the sound and the noise and the dust and the blasting, it takes on a sense of urgency.
Nobody wants to live next to the fire station, but everybody wants the fire engine to come if their house is on fire. The strip of rock is where it is, and so that's why the quarries are located here. You have to make these decisions about where those locations are. And the reason there's been so much growth in the rock business in Central Texas is because there's an enormous demand for new building material. Your house, apartment, even a skyscraper is all sitting on a concrete or rock foundation of some kind. You typically then walk out your front door on a sidewalk, step into the driveway, hop into your car. You then drive your portion of the street to wherever you're going to get to. That's on pavement. If you're going to continue to grow, you have to have these materials. It is a conflict.
The very first time I heard them blast across the street at Vulcan, we thought that a tree fell on our house. My 4-year-old, when it happens, she drops whatever she's doing and screams and crawls into my lap. Last year, we found out that a New York-based aggregate company wanted to build a rock crushing company right next to our subdivision. My children spend 90% of their time in our yard, and that's part of the reason we moved out here and on acreage. Unfortunately, it literally backs up to the quarry line. The one in Vulcan is pretty far away. Can you imagine with it being 500 yards from my house, like what that could do?
What worries me is, where is this expansion going to stop? Because we live here too. Are the quarries, and is the state requiring the quarries to be good neighbors? Has there been any studies whatsoever to determine the cumulative effect of all of these mining operations that's going on around us and how that's affecting our air quality, how that's affecting our water quality? As they keep expanding and getting closer and closer and closer to us, they're stealing our dreams from us.
I don't think anybody goes and picks as their next door neighbor for their property a rock quarry. There's a perception that we have of being dusty, dirty, and noisy. Those things are true. Some of the debates we've heard lately are like, well, we don't want a rock quarry here, but we're going to put a subdivision here. So it's still getting used. We're just in this time where we are growing so fast, it's changing quickly. And so there's a race to get these new properties built, and everybody's trying to decide what's going to happen first. It's a battle over resources more than anything else.
I worry daily on basically our house just plummeting in value. And I mean, I don't want to uproot our kids and then move. I like it here. Other than what's going on behind our house, it's a great place to live.
I'm committed to the hill country. I like living here. I've spent years building the home, the barns, my workshops the way I want them. How do I replace that at my age? It's absolutely satisfying to stand there in the morning, watch the sun come up, and look at the orchard that I've built and say, I did something useful here. So I'm not moving. And hopefully, at the end, our kids and our friends, their friends in the future will choose to come here and live here because the hill country will look like the rugged hill country instead of a moonscape.
Thanks, Anna, for putting that together. Great work. I'm waiting for it. I think it takes a minute for it to catch up. Do the panelists want to come up maybe real quick? Can I get the panel? I know. I just thought this may be a good time to, while I'm waiting for the mic to catch up. No, I'm not going to sit. I'm going to just stand probably, so you all make yourselves comfortable. We're going to have the panelists come up and sit down so that we can have them introduce themselves to all of you. And these are the folks that you get to ask questions to. Grant? So, is Grant here? I knew. I saw him earlier.
Is he in the bathroom?
Already getting a lot of questions on Facebook, so that's great. Keep them coming because I'll be looking there too. I'm trying to multitask today. We can start. I'll have these folks start by doing introductions, and we're just going to pass the mic down. So you all just explain who you are and kind of what you do.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it. As you all know, my name is David Perkins. I'm the president of the Texas Aggregates Concrete Association. Been in this role now not quite 2 years, but I've been in the industry for about almost 22 now. And of course, grew up here in the state of Texas, attended the University of Texas, and then I moved back to the Dallas area where I've raised my family. So obviously, the things that really kind of resonate to me, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to come and sit and have a true, meaningful dialogue. I realize that there's going to be some differences of opinion, and I respect that. But at the same time, I also understand how important it is to truly sit down and talk and to listen. And so I encourage that to take place tonight. I'm very excited about being able to be here. Certainly have appreciated being able to work with Tony and all the rest of the crew at the Austin American-Statesman as well as KVUE. It's certainly an important issue. We are, as a state, facing a lot of change. We're growing faster than we ever have. Our economy is continuing to be strong. Our unemployment rate is at 3.4%. Our economy is the 8th largest in the world. Our economy is bigger than Canada. Our economy is bigger than Russia. We've got a lot to be proud of here in this state. And Texas is a great state to do business. It's a great state for growth. But we also have to realize and understand how important it is to sit down and work together through these issues and make sure that we hear each other and we have good dialogue and good discussion. So I'm very excited to be part of it. Thank you very much.
Just a little tip for you guys. Try to hold the mic as close as you can just so the folks in the back can hear, okay? Thank you.
My name is Tony Plahetsky. I am a reporter for the Austin American-Statesman and also for KVUE. I'll keep my introduction very brief, but earlier this year in March, and I'm telling this with permission and his blessing, I received a phone call from someone I used to cover when he was an assistant chief in the Austin Fire Department. And he said, "You won't believe what is happening out here in the hill country. You've got to come see it. You've got to see it for yourself." And so I did a quick Google search and quickly learned that there is a lot going on as it relates to the growth of APOs, aggregate production operators here in the state. And so for 6 months, I really tried to understand the growth of this industry, all of the dynamics, and really, as I described previously, the battleground in a sense that is really unfolding between some operators and property owners. So what you've seen is the result of 6 months of work, not only by me, but a whole team of reporters and editors at both places.
I'm Jill Shackelford. I had the pleasure of working with Tony now for a few months on this article, and definitely think he did a great job. I'm really, really proud of the perspective he showed all around. I'll keep it brief, but I was in the industry as well. I'm no longer in that industry. I do consulting for homeowners and the industry. And I was laughing that bio. The only thing good about that bio you printed is that picture of me is old, so I don't have as many wrinkles as I used to. Anyway, but thanks for being here. I know you've got certainly more important things to do tonight, but this is very good for you to show up. And I look forward to sharing some of my mistakes I made along the way with you, and hope you'll see the perspective of that and learn something tonight. And just appreciate you being here.
My name is Grant Dean, and I'm a native of the Hill Country and citizen of Marble Falls. I'm a general contractor and a developer. Until about 2.5 years ago now, I had really relatively little knowledge of the aggregate industry itself, besides the fact that I use those products on a daily basis and certainly need them. And then we had a rock crusher quarry attempting to move in that bordered our neighborhood, but also was basically across the street from our new Baylor Scott and White Hospital. And I got a quick education that, I guess, fortunately, but possibly unfortunately, it's continuing till today. So 2.5 years later, we are still active in negotiations and conversations. We have been looking forward to and trying to put this type of a package together to have the opportunity to visit with the industry from the citizen standpoint and to see if there's issues that we can work on and work together to actually be better neighbors, as I say. So I thank y'all again, and Tony for putting this together also, and we are looking forward to some good opportunities. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name's Terry Wilson. I serve the people of House District 20, which is Burnett County, North and East Williamson County, and Mountain County, almost all the way to Texas A&M. Any whoops out there, John Don? Are you? There you go. Thank you very much. Here's the bottom line. In my district alone that I serve, there are many quarries as there was in the whole state of Texas 7 years ago. Here's the piece that matters. There has not been a significant law change since 1999. Let's start the discussion.
So I'm going to do it right here. How do we change that?
Well, obviously, TCEQ. Everybody familiar with TCEQ? They have great forums, don't they? Very informative, aren't they? At the end of the day, TCEQ is exactly right. They are the regulatory. They are the ones who execute the laws for which statutes are written by the legislature. It starts with legislature. It already started with you. The input that you have already provided into the legislature, our governor, lieutenant governor, you have caught their attention. I will tell you, in my very brief time in the state legislature, second session, I've already learned that it doesn't, big bills do not get passed on the first go around. If they're saying I'm missing, let them know it's not true.
Yeah, sorry.
So with that being said, that's about all right, Terry. Thank you. With that being said, it's going to take another session or two, but I think when we sit down and we get into the common sense discussion, realizing that the growth has been so significant in just 12 years, it's been a process just educating legislators. Think about it. Out of 150 representatives, 97 of them have quarries of some sort, be it sand or whatever it may be. All 31 Senate districts have the issue.
This is a question from someone here in the audience to David, and it says, you were saying on the World Rocked, which is the Statesman article, that residents are having to put up with a little dust on patios as an inconvenience. What do you say to the dust we are having to breathe before it lands on patio, being a health concern?
Well, first of all, hope that does not happen. And the fact that someone would say that it's an inconvenience is grossly wrong. It is not an inconvenience. And if somebody has an issue with dust on their property, that's unacceptable. There's no question about that. That should not happen. And I would say that if there is that issue, and if that concern comes up, that there are measures in place to ensure that those who are operating, if it's a facility that's operating, have requirements to meet, and they have to meet those requirements based on what is in their permit. Basically, the agency, the TCEQ, is required to enforce those, and they will come on site. They have the full authority not only to issue fines, but they also have the full authority to go to other measures, including and up to the Attorney General's office, if there is no compliance. So I would say, in terms of breathing the dust, that is absolutely something that no one should have to do. In terms of the real issue, it's about the facilities making sure that they are meeting the requirements of that permit, and if they're not, then they need to be held accountable.
Do you want to weigh in on any of that, because you're kind of on both sides?
First of all, it's a great question and concern. And in addition to what's required by TCEQ, and I understand your frustrations with TCEQ, there's things that the operator can do that aren't required. And most of them do. Some of them may not, and they need to. Like you said, they need to be accountable. But I encourage you, speak out. Call your elected official, call the operator and tell them to come over to your site and see the dust if there's dust. And they should have some best management practices in place, like running a water truck to keep it moist so there isn't as much dust, just things like that. So please know there's more out there than maybe what you've read about or hear about that they can do.
Jill, may I add
Sure.
to that, please? Thank you, Jill. You can call me, but you see how far I got, didn't you? I told you it'd take multiple sessions if we're going to do something. For good legislation to have TCEQ act on what Mr. Perkins mentioned, those statutes, it requires unanimous vote of both chambers and signed in law by the governor. But I will tell you, the lobby is extremely powerful. You know it, I know it. We've had plenty of meetings with them, but they sit at the end of the table and they listen. They do. They listen very, very well. What we need is action. See, when I said that the laws haven't changed since 1999, you got to remember the parameters for which TCEQ is acting. Yes, they moved from a general to a standard permit, which basically is a rubber stamp in many regards, just as long as the science of that piece of machinery that they put on that terrain meets a certain specifications on its output. What we did not see in 1999, or even 2005, or 2012, is that they were going to stack facilities on top of each other, next to each other, just down the road. Think about it. Marble Falls, the jewel of the Highland Lakes area, 10,000, Mike, is it 10,133 acres, I believe, incorporated? Surrounded by nearly 9,000 acres of quarry operation. Think about it. How long is tourism going to be our staple here? How long is it going to be that folks are, like Mr. Baum, coming here for their dream home in their retirement, when all you see is piltered grounds? So you can call me, but at the end of the day, you need to add a lot more to that call list. For our county representatives, you need the Texas Association of Counties. You need TML. You need the tourism lobby. You need the trucking lobby. There are lots of lobbies, the realtors lobby. And simply, if you look to see who lobbied against you, you'd see TACA and the Texas Association of Businesses. Now, look, I don't have a personal bone with them. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to. They're growing an association. They're representing as many people as they possibly can that's bringing businesses here to Texas. Because Texas, crushed stone, the business is good, isn't it? But think about it. Martin Marietta, a major defense industry, is in the rock crushing business. How lucrative is it? I'll tell you how lucrative it is. In the last 3 years, a 33% profit margin. 33%. And look, I didn't make those numbers up. All you have to do is see the companies that are traded on the free market, and they have to report it to the SEC. $300+ million for one company just in the last quarter. One company. So you can call me, but at the end of the day, I would encourage my county folks to gyrate theirs, the tourism to gyrate theirs, TML, where are you? And the Realtors Association, I appreciate all their support and effort. But look who does business with Texas Association of Businesses. And make a decision on your purchasing power in terms of who they rep, because they went against you in the committees and the hearings, and they were quite convincing.
First off, I'd like to thank Colonel Terry Wilson. We talk about politicians. I don't include him as one. Actually, Terry to me is an American soldier that is just fighting for us in another uniform right now. And y'all need to know how hard he works for pennies on the dollar down there working for us here in the Hill Country. And I guess I'd like to say at this point in time that this is one of the reasons that I think we're here tonight. The items that have been brought up here as far as the dust. And we just can't continue to blow that off anymore. Like, well, there you got a little dust, call. We all know, everybody sitting here has gotten a hard-learned education as to the realities with the agency. And I call the TCEQ the agency because it's a lot easier to say. So we know the inadequacies. There is purely almost a lack of any oversight whatsoever. Just for an example, in 2 different occasions when we've had informational meetings here, and I find it quite ironic. I learned about the industry in August of 2017. We had our informational meeting in October of 2017. Last year, we had another informational meeting for the Double Horn folks here in middle of October, and here we are again. The 3rd year in a row that we're actually sitting here, we're all still saying the same things. Everywhere that I go and I meet with different groups and I listen to what their issues are, they're saying the same thing we always have. You can go back and take notes from one informational meeting and basically overlay them on another. All our concerns are very, very valid. We believe and would like to begin the conversations tonight that beyond legislative input and laws being changed, that we have the opportunity here that the operators can do things on their own that voluntarily that don't cost that much money. And we're not asking, it's not a big list. It's virtually 6 things we're talking about. Pave your roads, keep the dust down. Do everything that you can to truly follow what the permit requires you to do. Although there's a lot of things that we dislike about the permit too, as we all know. But the opportunity exists for many, many directions that we believe that the agency could take to do things to become better players within a community.
Another question from the audience talking about making mining operations and zoning them so that they cannot be placed next to homes, schools, churches. Is there anything that can be done even at a local level to make that happen?
Sorry.
That's quite all right. Comes with the territory. So I will tell you that, of course, the legislature has restricted what counties can do. There is no plans and zoning. I would say about 5-6 years ago, there wasn't a commissioner in the House that sit there and say, give me the authority at the county level. Now they're saying, hey, we may need to reconsider this. Is there appetite in the Texas legislature to do that in the counties? And I would say no, there's not. When it comes to municipalities, we have done some things in terms of their ability to annex, to be able to protect and so forth, but we even took that away because of some bad actors. So at the local and the county level, no. You're looking at it right here, the legislature. It requires the legislature, and yes, Grant, the industry has a vote. Let's think about this. In 1959, Volvo decided to introduce the seatbelt. In 1973, most major car industry or auto industry incorporated because it was a good idea, because there was results. Did it require law? Very little. But still and yet, we will look to it and we'll say, hey, this community here in Marble Falls started in the mining. We still are. 8,000 plus acres. The capital came from here. That's how we got the daggum rail line. We're proud of being in that industry. And by the way, our mayor here in Marble Falls is in that business himself. But even he will say, enough. So when you look at what we need to do, I don't think that we're asking much when we're saying, don't go next to our hospitals, which happened, or is happening, or could possibly happen, because guess what? The property's for sale, but the permit can continue to be renewed. Don't go in our neighborhoods. You know, you saw a video of Texas crushed stone up there. There are literally numerous companies that are great in the community, as Jill said. Texas crushed stone's one of them. Matter of fact, they're huge. They're just south of Georgetown, north of Round Rock. Heck, they're putting suburbs next to them. But there's a difference between a quarry, a rock crusher that's been there, and neighborhoods come to them versus coming from New York and going right in between two neighborhoods. The industry has to police itself. Let me ask you, are we over-regulated if we allow them to go next to our hospitals in the middle of our neighborhoods? I don't think so.
You brought up a good point, and I kind of wonder sometimes if locally owned quarries are different than maybe these big corporations that come in. I don't think this was supposed to happen, but I kind of get it because we're trying to keep the conversation going. So yes.
Let me hold it for you so that I get it.
Okay, I can't speak very well. My voice is about gone. 76 years old. I've got 3 solutions to stop all this stuff. Number 1, get rid of the corrupt politicians that are receiving money under the table. Number 2, get rid of the contractors, the batching, concrete batching, and the agri people that donate money under the table. Get them, run them off. And I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Make a long story short, I came back to that. Okay. Number 1.
What's the third one?
Number 1, require the people that want the permits, aggregate and concrete to put up $1 million fund in a deposit to pay the people that they are impacting the most.
Thank you. So first, I said this was my second session, and it was a significant difference between my first session. My first session, I don't think we did anything. Literally, we talked about tax reform, we did nothing. We talked about tax transparency, we did nothing. We said we were going to fix education finance reform, we did nothing. But here's what I did learn, sir, is I was of the same opinion as you. You know, in my command post, you know, y'all, I served 32 years. Most of my time in combat formations, 14 and a half years fighting the war on terrorism. And I always had CNN and everything else on my command post when they really were news. And I would tell you, I had no idea what was going on back home. My family moved here in 1970. Had no idea. But once I got here and I realized the disdain that most people have for polarized politics, that's actually what encouraged me to run, with only 3 months to run. Only 3 months. This was not on my bailiwick, but I'll tell you one thing. Y'all made it very loud and clear. When I got inside the House, and this is where I'm going with it, I thought the very same thing. I'm going to go in here, I'm going to be an encourager. But I'm going to tell you that 85-90% of the politicians are there for the right reason. I mean, come on, it's not for the money. It's only $600 a month. Did y'all know that? $600 a month. I'm not complaining. It pays for my gas to come see all y'all. But here's the deal, sir. This is what I learned. It's not about the donations that were made. It's about the fear that's instilled to the legislatures that is made, saying that it could ruin our economy, that it could cost the consumer even more. Let's think about this. 33% profit margin on that one industry I told you, that one company, according to the SEC. Let's think about this. In the last 12 years, it's been an increase in growth by 83%. But the prices have gone up by 20% or more, in the 30s, in the cost of this material, be it asphalt, concrete, whatever it may be. That concrete stack you buy them in Lowe's and stuff like that, that costs them kind of money. They may only make about 7.5% profit on that. But think about it, in the last 3 years, it's been over a 22% increase. Have y'all stopped seeing the buildings going up? No, that's not going to happen. What's the difference between putting next to a hospital and going 5 miles down the road? How much do you think that's really going to cost? Or instead of going in to the middle of a neighborhood, you go 5 miles down the road there, because we all know there's lots of land, isn't there? Lots of it, isn't Miss Vic? A lot. There's a lot of opportunities. So this is back to a problem that the Aggregate Association has. See, they represent really good companies, but they also represent some bad ones. And they have to come together, and they have to come together and push for a positive change in legislation. The difference here in Texas is this is no longer a Texas industry. These are companies from New York, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Spain, Ireland, Denmark, and so forth. And I'm going to leave one country out of respect to some people here.
Let me let David kind of respond to that, because I do think it is a concern for people. This is not just a Texas companies doing this.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to understand what we're talking about. And you made the comment originally about 2012, there were only a couple of dozen quarries throughout the state. It's important for folks to understand that that's not true.
the reason that that number has changed is because of a legislation that was actually passed in 2011 related to the aggregate industry called the APO program. And that was something that came as a result of several sessions and a lot of really good dialogue that happened between the industry and lawmakers. So something has happened significant for the industry since 1999. That number actually is closer to about 530 in 2012. And we did some research and actually looked at the Mine Safety and Health Administration, which is another agency that oversees our operations on the occupational safety side. And that growth from 2012 to 2018 showed an increase of 260 new facilities. So that's a 50% growth. So it is growth. But if you annualize that over that period of time, you're looking at about a 7% increase on a year-to-year basis. So if you think about all the other statistics during that time period of 2012 to 2018, you look at home starts, you look at new jobs, you look at what the oil industry is doing out in West Texas with the Permian Basin, you look at the amount of investment that's taking place on the coast, anticipating the additional trade,
It's probably this, sorry.
There is a tremendous amount of activity.
Sorry. I don't know
Boy,
whether
the
it helps if I
gremlins
stand
around
here
me,
or
I
not.
know this is like bad guy. Who's doing that? Are you doing that back there? Sorry. Anyway, so we're responding to that growth in a natural way. Martin Marietta, you're right, was a defense contractor, but the aggregates division actually was spun off in 1994. So they've been separate companies for 25 years, so for a long time. So those were important things that I hope to bring some light to. But with regard to what needs to happen and in terms of taking care of looking at going forward, I think it's important to understand what is in place already. And there are some significant things that are in place that govern our industry. There are as many as 15 different agencies that oversee the regulation of our industry, from the TCEQ to the EPA, to the Mine Safety and Health Administration, to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, to TxDOT, to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to the Corps of Engineers, to TxDOT. There are a number of agencies that oversee our operations and require very different aspects of safety and environmental protection. So I think it's important to take a good inventory of what is already in place. Now, do I agree that there are improvements that can be made? Absolutely. There are improvements and enhancements that can be made all the time. And a lot of them are what Jill talked about. If you sit down and you actually have a dialogue with the operator and the neighbor, there are some incredible outcomes that can happen as a result of that. And I understand you're shaking your head, and I know that it's not every case. But we as an association and the members that are part of our association, who, yes, they're based in other countries, they're based in other states, but that's not any different than what our industry has been for many, many years. But the bottom line is that the people who work in these facilities are your neighbors. They have children that grow up in these areas. They work at these facilities. Golly, this is just, the gremlins are around me all the time.
Maybe I'll have you sit over there.
Yeah, I might need to sit next to Representative Wilson. We'll sit together. I'll come sit with you. You know, actually, believe it or not, I'm going to come sit right here. But we are. But oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And there's black sheep.
But we are your neighbors, and we care. And we have workers that are at these sites for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. We want to make sure that they don't have any adverse impacts on their health as they do their jobs.
Do you do research on that?
We absolutely do. We're required. We're inspected 2 times a year by the Mine Safety and Health Administration in terms of all types of safety on occupational safety.
Is that open to them? Is that open to everyone?
That's public record. It's all public available information. It is. Every facility is inspected that are operating. Those that are not operating don't get inspected because they're not operating. But anyway, I think it's important to share that we work, we live in these communities,
we are encouraging, we are wanting to make investments and wanting to do things that show, hey, we're here to listen, we're here to make changes, and those things can happen. Last point is you talk about incompatible land use and development next to quarries. San Antonio is a great example of large operations that have been in place for decades that have had development that has happened around them. And I understand in a lot of cases they were there first. But the bottom line is that they still continue to exist and operate together. And those are some great examples of where very high value homes and these large operations, one in particular, at one point was the largest producer in the whole United States, had several high dollar developments around it. And they work in a very collaborative and a very productive way to come up with some great solutions as far as communication. So those things are possible, and it can be done on a voluntary basis.
And I will tell you, I mean, I live next door to a rock quarry owner who lives down the street from his rock quarry. And so we do have active communication with him, and he's always been a great neighbor. You know, I know that may not be everyone's case, so I understand that, and we do hear you. And I think that's what David's trying to address.
Are there any folks from Double Horn here by chance?
there's
Yeah,
a
a lot. Yeah, good group. Yeah, I know that there's a lot happening in Double Horn, and one of the things that I learned during my reporting, particularly at the end, is that a lot of people in the community have been working apparently with Spicewood crushed stone. I know that Jill has been involved in that discussion. And while there's a lot of legislative change that clearly people want, it's going to be at least 18 months before that even gets tackled. And so I actually
opened a quarry next to a neighborhood in Hayes County. And while I had a large piece of land, I didn't mind all of it because I sit on the Hill Country Conservancy Board, and I wanted to conserve part of it. And I thought maybe that would feel good to my neighbors, and it didn't. And I didn't realize at the time, and I made some mistakes just assuming things. And so one of the things that helped my operation, and I feel like really went a long way, and I would almost would propose that it be mandated, actually, is to form an advisory council where you are plugged in with the operation, and you're sitting on a council, and it's a formal board, and you meet regularly. And what it did for me, and what I think it does for any operator, is it forces transparency and communication in a safe environment and accountability. And just like you said, you know, one bad operator makes everybody look bad. And there's some of them out there, and they need to be shut down, frankly, and I'm not afraid to say that. It's, you know, good Lord, if I can follow the rules, and I was just a family-owned business, I wasn't a publicly owned company, anyone can follow the rules. It's not hard. It's not hard to do the right thing. And so forming an advisory council, I think, is crucial for transparency and ongoing communication in a safe environment and on a regular basis. That's just one of the things.
Alfonso Rico asked, how or do rock quarries have plans to repair the land that they destroy? And are they required to have those plans?
I'll take a stab at that. So yes, first of all, there is not a statewide reclamation law in place. That is true. I will say that. But what I will say is that many of these facilities, in fact, most of these facilities, do have some amazing societal value after that mining is done. And I will, sir, yes. So if you go to San Antonio and you look at the botanical gardens and the zoo, you go down to Fiesta, Texas, you go to the Rim, you go to the, Zilker Park, that great place in Austin. Didn't realize that the soccer fields there actually were once a clay pit for Acme Brick back a long time ago. Murchison Middle School, that big hill that people like to try to climb up, that was a part of a quarry at one time. Quarries have so much potential to do even more. And this is where I think there's an opportunity to work with the legislature and looking at the possibility of what these facilities can do after their mining use is over, because ultimately they can become an asset and a benefit for generations to come. And these are things that we're talking about.
Well, absolutely, and they are. And there are so many examples across the country of that. You look at water storage. You know, the cost to build a new reservoir today, not to mention the permitting and the land acquisition, but is anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 an acre foot. That's hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. We need water resources in this state. We need the ability to make sure that our aquifers are getting recharged at a reasonable, sustainable rate. Why not take a look at these facilities and identify ways where they can be used after the mining is over as water storage? There are opportunities for conservation easements with the state. And again, this is run through the state program, where areas that are either mined or that are not being mined can be set aside and dedicated for wildlife or for recreation or for any other kind of natural use. That creates a great tax benefit for the owner, but it also creates a great asset for the community. So I believe that there are a tremendous number of things that these facilities can do and can be after that useful mining life has been completed. And there are examples of that all over the place. And a lot of times that is something that is done either by the landowner or by the market development that's taking place around there to facilitate that. So I do believe that there are some great potential opportunities there.
I certainly understand that. As a matter of fact, I think the folks from Double Horn would be happy to back me up on this. But when the guys from New York came down and decided to move literally in their backyard, as you're well aware, they actually told them that their true plans for this project was to excavate a really nice deep pond lake that they were going to surround with luxury homes. So that's their long-term plans. They're going to, of course, quarry in their backyard during the process. That is the issues that we have. And, you know, the folks that have, I look around here now, David, and I see people from Comal County. We've got folks from Kendall County. You know, there was folks from Somerville County up in Glen Rose area that were trying to get here tonight. We have mayors. We have commissioners. There's judges here. I mean, this, a few years back, and the agency has even made this statement to me that 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when they would have a meeting like this, there may be 10 or 15 people that show up. When we go to meetings now, there's 400, 500, 600 people that attend these meetings, and everyone's saying the same things. We talk about oversight, and I mean, we can sugarcoat things all that you want, and, you know, long term, yeah, when we're all left this earth, that certainly may be a resort with a nice pond in the center of it. But in the interim, it's not doing these folks from Double Horn one iota of good. And our position is, this is the thing. I've been a general contractor for 35 years. Our city manager, I mean, when you go to permit a job, and I have friends in the industry. I see friends here that are in the industry or trying to be in the industry, and others that have. You know, and I've never wanted to alienate any of those folks. They've been here forever. But the issue is that our growth and the growth of this industry has just overtaken us all.
Yep, no, I hear you. I do. I hear you. And that's the important thing, is that these facilities have to be able to coexist, and there has to be a way for these facilities to work with the neighbors and the stakeholders that are around them. That has to happen while this takes place. But I thought of a good quote, and I think, and I'm going to read it, but I think this is really relevant for this kind of discussion. And the quote is that a society grows great when old men or women plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. And I think we have to think about those things for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. And you know, and I understand that there's cynicism about that, but ultimately, the things that these facilities can become are incredible benefit and asset to society.
Hey, listen, let's encourage people to be, this is supposed to be a conversation. I don't want you attacking David. He's been really great to give us his time today to kind of weigh into what the industry feels about these topics. And he is here because he also wants to share what it is your concerns are with some of the people that he represents. So let's please give him the respect that he deserves, just like I hope, you know, we're giving you the respect you deserve.
Thank you, Terry. I think the reason why it's hard for these folks because they have been greatly disrespected. But I do agree with you, because Mr. Perkins, I appreciate you being here. It's pretty gutsy. But I promise I'm going to walk you to your car. A lot of people. Well, the State Department's not here to tell me to take my body armor off. But you know, it takes a lot to come here. I know you're in a difficult situation. I know more than most in terms of the representation of some very bad companies. And they have a vote. And when y'all come to the table and we start talking about bills, that whether you can put solutions on the table or not. And so since this is only a discussion and a conversation, in all sincerity, appreciate you here. Was there one idea that y'all put on the table this last session that addressed any of my issues in House Bill 509? Just one. Yep. Because I got Patty, I'm going to set you up here.
I know.
Chairman Patty's going to disagree with you, as well as others, but was there one? Can you tell me what that was?
Well, I will say that, yes, there was at least one, and there were many things that we were interested in having a conversation with you about with regard to that bill, which I think was 23 pages long.
Just 23?
Yeah, and so we met. You know, I remember we sat down, and originally we met before the session started in December, and we sat for about an hour and a half, and I think I took about 3 or 4 pages of notes, and I listened, and I'm like, okay, there are some significant concerns here. And so we actually provided, and I sent back a series of responses of what I heard to address a lot of those, and I think almost all of those concerns, and provided a lot of information and a lot of data to you and to your staff, and I think it was about 15 pages worth. Unfortunately, there didn't appear to be anything that was contemplated or considered in the proposed legislation that you had. I will say that, you know, there are things that can be done to improve and enhance the process that we advocated for during the legislative session. I think that the TCEQ meeting process, frankly, I think everybody in here would agree, it's not a very good process. Yeah, I at least get one hand. Okay, I agree. There needs to be improvements in transparency and clarity about the process, because there is a lot of information that has to be submitted. These applications aren't just rubber stamped. There's a lot of work that has to go into them. And if you go through a full permitting process, the modeling that has to be done, I was just looking at the modeling submittal sheet that the TCEQ requires, and there are 23 tabs that have to be filled out in order to submit the model. And all that's done under an EPA protocol. So there's a lot of work that does get done in these facilities, and that's the thing I want to try to at least share. And I understand that I want to try to at least share. But I do believe that TCEQ transparency process is something that does need to be and can be enhanced and improved. So that's one thing. I think that in terms of the idea of, you know, sharing and getting information out to the public, and whether that's TCEQ or whether that's a variety of agencies that are all required to come together to do an informational meeting, I think those are all things that will improve and enhance the process. I also think that in terms of the standards and the protectiveness of the standards, I think those standards can be reviewed and have a technical evaluation that's done of them to ensure that they are conservative and that they are protective. I think those are things that the agency can do on their own, but they can also be done as an encouragement. So those are all discussion points that we've been willing and interested in having.
Can I ask you, someone in the crowd here asked if TACA would support a joint committee at the legislature to look into these issues during the next session.
I think that's probably already taking place, I think, as far as the interim is concerned. So I think that those are typically done through the legislative process in the interim, and there are charges that are going to be including looking at these types of facilities and the implementation of legislation.
Have you seen that?
I have not seen anything. I don't think that's come out until probably, next month is when the House interim charges are supposed to come out. But I understand that is a part of that process, and we'll obviously be engaged and involved in that.
Did anybody hear just one? Just one. This is what I got. What I will do is I will release everything. Is it okay? Everything that y'all provided? Do you mind? Because usually, let me tell you what I do out of courtesy.
Get you to put that up there.
There you go. Out of courtesy, you know, if folks answer my questions and so forth, I keep it. I don't release it because we kind of keep integrity. I actually value lobby because they know if they tell you a story and they get caught, you're not out loud through the door anymore, and their credibility is ruined. So when we met 3 times, I didn't get anything in terms of a solution set that would protect our water, that would protect us in terms of public safety on our roads, that would not allow this or the hospital. Sir, good to see you, Mr. Earl. Scott and White, they have invested interest in this as well because they provide your medical care. And with, you know, air purification on top of their building, having a quarry, a rock crusher, right next to them or across the street from them wasn't going to be very helpful. I will tell you that in the numbers, they can be very confusing. When I said 52, actually it's 56, that was the number of locations in terms of rock crushers. But when you look at the merit of permits of additional all in around those areas, that's why exponentially increased. When you look at the numbers of permits from 97 to over 1,200 probably passed now, because I think, Jeff, our data is only through 2017, if I'm correct.
18.
Significant a number of permits. When you look at quarrying permits altogether, it's well over 4,000, and that's the numbers that TCEQ has provided. When you look at the dollar values that I provided to you today, it's either on the SEC or it's what the comptroller has provided. Realizing that only $633 million out of the $4 billion was taxable. This is an industry that pays very little severance tax or any taxes at all. But you look at the oil industry. Texas Oil and Gas Association will tell you that they, in terms of severance, pay into our education, our roads, and on and on and on and on. We tap that community, and we're very thankful for the oil and gas industry. But when you look at the sheer numbers of quarries and the curb cuts on our highways and our county roads that cannot manage the weight of those trucks, think about it. Think about it. 1431 was just paved, wasn't it, in front of HEB? Have you looked at it in such a short period of time? Those debits is because of the weight of trucks. Trucks, not cars. Cars is so minuscule. But when you look at the fact that our roads are costing exponentially more, when you look at our county commissioners and our cities and what they're having to go through to do road repair, where does that money come from? You. So to be good neighbors, you got to pay your share. You got to make sure that when there's not a water district, that you put in a water recirc. What would be wrong with that legislation? I will tell you that the good companies for which House Bill 509 was written was gold standard of those industries, those good companies. It says that you'll have a level of concrete for shake, rattle, and roll. So it comes off on the property before it enters the road. That there's acceleration, deceleration lanes. That they're recirculating their water. We are not asking for a lot. Reclamation? I wouldn't dare ask Texas Crushed Stone to give up their opportunity to be the next Six Flags of Georgetown. There's people moving there. But it's the ones who are coming from out of state. It's the ones who don't give a damn about the communities, that are going and putting where they shouldn't. Again, let me ask you, is the regulations tough enough? We can sit there and say we got tons, we got 15 agencies. I'm going to tell you, majority of the businesses share a good portion of those same agencies that they have to go through. They got to do it for employment safety. And, you know, MSIP, they're going to detonate and so forth like that. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to provide for you all their check sheets to include TCEQ.
and they're going to have the ability to go through and see how often they're actually inspected. And by the way, when they say self-monitoring, that means no monitoring.
So let me ask you something just real quickly, because we talk a lot about TCEQ, and it's not just the rock quarry industry. I mean, I did a whole series of stories about wastewater treatment plants that are dumping into our waterways all across Texas. They allow thousands of permits. This is the same agency that's supposed to regulate our water that's allowing them to dump treated wastewater. So we have this issue with the rock quarry. So what is TCEQ's responsibility here? I think most of us expect them to protect this land that we love.
Where shall I start?
And can we change that? I mean,
You know what? I will tell you, I'm very concerned. You know, I've been coming to Lake LBJ since 1970 when my granddad moved here, and I spent all my summers here. I don't remember as much algae. I don't remember the muck as bad as it is. I don't remember the quarries that actually sit next to the riverbanks on the land, though, that put all the sediment, push the sediment, not all, but a lot of the sediment in this last flood that we went through. So I'm going to tell you, TCEQ actually has a buy. But as a colonel of infantry, I'm going to tell you, that's bullshit. Because at the end of the day, you've got to be proactive. You have to run razor's edge and challenge the law, even if it means that you got to go to court, TCEQ. It means that you got to have some leadership. And unfortunately, TCEQ, now I'll tell you, I briefly met the commissioners. I need to sit down with the commissioners. But in terms of leadership on day-to-day operations, they much rather go after the pond at Riverly Ranch than sit there and address the issues that we're having. Think about it. Who's from Florence, Texas? How's your wells doing? Did you know Williamson County has the preponderance of the mines insured numbers? Has more than any other county, more than Burnett County. Florence, Texas. Is there any water in Florence, Texas? Very little. Is there any requirement that holds them to a standard of how much water that they can pump? No. So I'm a little embarrassed about the 23-page House Bill 509, but I did put a 200-page water bill in circulation. But we've got to make sure that we give TCEQ the tools, and the legislature deserves that. And I invite industry. I invite industry to help us with that. Thank you.
David, I don't know if you can weigh in on this too. I'm not sure if you will be able to, but I've had a couple of people weigh in about one of them, rock quarries in particular, has almost 36 violations with the TCEQ, and yet they're allowed to renew their permit. So is there a certain allowable level of violation complaints? I don't know if you can answer that.
I believe that they are not allowed to renew their permit or do any permit action that they have pending violations. If they've resolved the violations, then they are allowed to. But my understanding is that TCEQ policy is that they do not allow any permit activity. If you are on an active, you have any notice of violation, you may not renew or do any other permit action until that's cleared up.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I got cut off a while ago when I was in mid-deal. You didn't want me to roll on there, and a lot of people have heard me speak here, and you may be sorry because I've built up a lot of information in here. But a couple of things as far as the violations. Unfortunately, Tony Lott had another issue come up, but we have a very important member of our group from Kendall County, from Bernie, and I can tell you, David, that she's got a stack of documentation this high for non-compliance, and when the TCQ has barely even slapped their hand if they even come by. And this is the thing that we've all faced. When I learned about this, as I said, I have to do permits all over the world, not the world, but all over this part of my world. And, to be able to take a standard permit, it's reviewed, 7 days later, it's stamped for $900, and you have a permit, and on standard permit basis, and you can go to work. I was just absolutely flabbergasted that anything is that simple, especially as something that is this complex. So you say, well, and as you asked earlier, as far as the TCEQ being designed to protect us and to protect our air, of the 15 guys that supposedly oversee the quarry industry, the top one there, the TCEQ, is the only one that actually reviews the air quality. The rest of them, as Terry mentioned, are either safety. They even have the fire marshal as part of their list of oversight. And I'm thinking, what's a fire marshal doing down in a quarry? But regardless, well, I understand that those are not really oversight as far as the air quality and what we are actually breathing. 25 years ago in 2012, we have what even you've said, a 500% increase in the amount of quarry activity within the hill country. Well, then think about the emissions from that we're breathing 500% more of whatever particulate matter that may be. As far as the TCEQ being able to actually oversee it, when I was cut off earlier, they have 2 inspectors. When we've had our meetings up here for 11 counties in our area, they actually have only 2 inspectors to police all of the quarries in 11 counties. They are absolutely understaffed. State doesn't want to fund them. They basically just look the other way. And we all know that. When I learned about this, that, no matter what, you get a standard permit. And this is the thing that has got me, really, that I think the industry has been doing this so long that things they've gotten used to it. And folks have become complacent or became complacent. Well, I'm getting a quarry in my backyard. I can't beat them because that's the facts. The facts are that, if you've got $900, you have someone else fill out your permit. The TCEQ looks over it for a minute. There's no scientific data that's required. The modeling itself is absolutely, basically it's deceptive due to the fact that it only takes into consideration one rock crusher. It does not take into consideration any of the traffic, any of the dust from the transportation, or the dynamite, the explosive activities. It takes none of that in consideration. They don't take into consideration that you've got another quarry emitting the same or more fugitive dust right next door. So then on the other hand, then when someone does file a complaint, which is very, very evident many, many times has been identified, they call in, they want a complaint. Well, you've got all these quarries and all this dust. They go in there and they say, well, we can't tell it where it's from. And that's part of the reason we think they build close together so that they can disguise whoever's throwing it up there, man. Who's going to know whose dust that is? So did you want
I did. Thank you. I'm going to take some heat off of you right quick.
Right.
So, Mr. Perkins talked about the 2011 legislation. Had nothing to do with permitting. Had to do with fines, misbehaviors, and so forth like that. When I said there hasn't been significant change in law since 1999, that's a fact. I will tell you, I have a document here that was commissioned by Governor Perry in 2005. He wanted a study, an oversight in terms of what needed to be done in this industry. On it was 3 senators who at the end of the day recommended by signing it. And then there was 3 House members who did not. 2 folks out of the industry who did not. The 2005 recommended oversight language has to do with what we've been talking about here. Not one action. By the way, I recommend that y'all go and see who was on that committee, on that 2005 document. I think Tom Craddock was our Speaker of the House at that particular point in time. I think Representative Kemple's father was on that committee. But I will tell you this, when you look at what we need to do, the legislation, just one of the 30 plus that was out there to be discussed, to be voted on, was let's just take a look at the air quality piece because we know that it's off kilter since 1999. Let's take a look at it because we have something that has changed. It's called the cumulative effect. Not of just what's roads and everything else like that, or that rock crusher and the additional permitting that has happened with that rock crusher, but let's look at when they go next to each other. And there are, over 8,000 acres, around 10,131 little old Marble Falls. Let's see what the cumulative, and still yet,
the industry said, no, we won't even go for that study. We won't even go for that. I will tell you something that's interesting, though. Some of those good companies I was talking to you about, some who get the majority of our state road contracts. Isn't that a beautiful thing? You get the contracts for the road, and then you get the sustainment contract to fix it after you ruined it. It's amazing. It's a wonderful thing. But that's a necessary evil because the trucks are heavy, and there's nothing you can do about that. But when you look at the simple legislation, can we just have a study? No. No. When Chairman Patty was sitting there in that meeting with me, and we were sitting around the table with the industry, is there anything? No. There's plenty of regulation on us right now. Plenty of regulation. So let's don't be fooled. This is going to be a long road. There are now 97 representatives that are impacted. All 31 Senate districts are impacted. And guess what? The governor is on your side. I'm going to tell you, the governor is on your side. He said, Terry, he said, I appreciate 509, how it's written. I need you to make these changes. One is there's more mining than just quarry mining. There's sand, for the fracking and all those sorts of things. We have significant issue in West Texas because those trucks have to get from Central. Now they can have the sand in West Texas. But it is ruining the roads, and there's not enough capacity. How many of y'all been to Odessa, Texas recently? Or San Angelo? It is crazy. It's worse than Los Angeles. But the problem is with that weight and the fact that there's not enough road, they're tearing up the road beyond belief, and it's causing a public safety issue. Even for our truck drivers. They said, Terry, it's more than that. I need you to make sure that, we had this little thing called a hurricane, and we found out that there were more mining going on than there was permits. Or they had expanded beyond their capacity. And now that debris, just like we saw up the Llano River that wound up in Lake LBJ, is happening in East Texas, and it's going to cost millions of dollars to the taxpayer to clean up those water tributaries and so forth. So, again, I just ask you, can we at least get a survey on the air?
Go ahead. Can I?
Sure, real quick, and then I've got some quick questions I want to ask.
Okay,
So,
great. So I think it's important to clarify a couple of things, and that's what I'm hoping to do here. And first of all, the commission study that was done in 2005, you said that there was not one thing that came as a result of that.
Is what we talked about here.
Okay,
Yeah,
because
there were things done, but not of what
because and I've got a summary of everything that was recommended. And I would like to kind of go through that. I think it's important. And again, just for perspective, I think it's important for the crowd to understand that, the folks to understand. There was a requirement or a request for a quarry permit. Now, that did not pass. But it had a site plan, which now is required as a part of the APO registration. A transportation plan, it's not specifically required, but TxDOT does require a safety analysis for entrance and exit. They do require that. Blasting regulations, now that's largely governed by MSHA, and there have been enhanced requirements there with regard to that. Also ATF, those are things that have been increased and enhanced since this time. A reclamation plan, that has not been required statewide, I've already stated that. And there's certainly discussions there. But there are a lot of private landowner agreements that require reclamation, and there are some portions of the state that have a reclamation and post-mining use requirement, i.e. in the John Graves area, where sand and gravel mining is done. And an approved air quality permit, and that's always been required before operation. Additional power to regulate dimension stone. There's increased enforcement on this as a result of the APO program, and of course the John Graves program as a result of that. It requested a tarping of trucks. This is currently under federal statute. The state, TxDOT, enforces those. They have the discretion to do that, but there is not a state law, but it is an enforcement of the federal law. Additional penalties for operating without a stormwater permit. Those are in place. There are minimum penalties that were established, i.e. requiring the multi-sector general permit, which is our facilities are under that jurisdiction. It's also addressed by the APO registration program and penalties that you get if you fail to register. Again, the APO is not a permit. That's correct. But what it does is it ensures that the agency knows that you have to meet all of the potential applicable requirements. So it's a clearinghouse to give them the ability to do multimedia inspections. Continuing education. This is another thing that was some initial discussion but did not get completed. The PBR for rock crushing was eliminated. That's correct. There's a standard permit now, which you have talked about. And the standard permit is in place, but it's not a 9-day turnaround. You are required to go through public notice for the standard permit. There's a 30-day period for public notice and then another period for the public to provide comments. Granted, the TCEQ, if you meet those requirements, there is not any recourse, and I understand that, and that is a source of frustration, and I recognize that. But the standard permit was developed as a result of very conservative modeling that was done by the agency. Should those be reviewed? Should the protectiveness of that be reviewed? Can it be reviewed? Absolutely. Do we feel that they're going to continue to be protective? Absolutely. But we have to stand behind that science. We have to understand that. It talks about strengthening notice provisions, and again, those requirements are in place for the standard permit. And then a study on the cost of road construction, and that's still something that has not been done. So there were a lot of requirements and a lot of requests that were put as a result of that study that actually have been put in place. And that's the thing that is important to understand. And Representative Wilson, I implore you to be willing to listen to those pieces of information because they are relevant. They may not be enough, and I understand that, but they are relevant and they should be a part of that conversation. When we had our meeting with Chairman Patty and our stakeholder group, we had the opportunity to look at this bill for less than a day, and we had no ability to provide our input. So there really wasn't a true engaged dialogue that took place as a result of that. I would love to sit down and discuss and talk about some potential opportunities for us to talk.
Right here.
Well, I think that's kind of what we're doing.
I got some ideas.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
But I want to say one more thing about the modeling and the cumulative effects. That's a question that comes up. People wonder, well, you've got all these facilities, all these new operations that are coming in. How are we going to understand that they are not being taken into consideration of all the other facilities?
And all the other subdivisions.
If you have to do modeling, and if you go for a full permit, the standard permit only allows you to do a certain amount of volume. You can only operate for 2,650 hours a year at a 200 ton per hour rate. That's about a 500,000 ton facility. That's all you can produce under that standard permit. If you want to go above that, you've got to go through full new source review modeling.
Not true.
It is true. And you can look at the regulations, and they are in place. That is a specific requirement. And every facility that wants to produce more than that volume must go through that modeling process. That modeling is developed by the EPA. It's also reviewed by other state agencies, including the TCEQ. And one of the things that it does is it takes into consideration all sources around that facility within a 10-kilometer radius. Those are all a part of that modeling that has to be done. This is how EPA demonstrates that facilities meet the compliance of the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. That's how the ozone standards are evaluated and are met. So there are, and again, and I understand and respect that you may not agree, but at least I want to share this information because it is important to be a part of this dialogue. If we are going to have meeting dialogue, those things need to be considered as a part of the discussion. No.
Thank you. It takes two to dialogue. And you weren't there, sir. And you ought to be ashamed of yourself for trying to convince these folks that y'all were, okay? Because at the end of the day, 3 meetings, you had no solution sets on the table whatsoever. Whatsoever. You know it and I know it. Look, there is no reason for me to have an integrity issue on this issue. None whatsoever. If you've trusted me with your soldiers, sailors, and airmen, why wouldn't you trust me on this one? I am telling you that there is no sincerity in changing the laws. And by the way, this is how it works. As long as there's a devil or a threat, okay, that potential legislation may be passed, and guess what? They get more customers. It's that fear piece. This is very simply how we asked. And by the way, that Bill 509 did change. It went from, let's give it to the Railroad Commission because they have some backbone. Let's get it out of TCEQ. Then we thought we had committee members that would, a little tough on the railroad. Why don't we just make it stronger for the TCEQ? So we changed it. We did that. It did change in progress. But think about it. This is what we asked. We want acceleration, deceleration roads. So we quit maiming our public. He talks about the cover over the top of the trailer. Let's talk about how many DPS officers that are the only ones authorized with a commercial vehicle inspection to be able to do that. And Director McGraw of DPS will sit there and say, I don't have enough. If you ask Sheriff Chody of Williamson County or Sheriff Boyd of Burnett County, they'll pull over a truck and they have to wait for hours, but they can't because within a couple hours they have to release when they see an infraction on those trucks. And the vast majority of these quarries don't own those trucks.
Amen.
I'm going to tell it. That's to their defense. They don't own those trucks.
That's a fact.
So when you look at this, we have to do things like empower sheriff's departments to do that. But when you look at the rules and regulations as it pertains to commercial vehicle inspection, it is significant. You could open a quarry easier. Joking. I'm just trying to make light of this. But when you sit there and ask what we want, we don't want to maim our people. So look, hey, have a shake, rattle, and roll. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of companies around here have that to make sure that the debris falls off. The good ones do. We ask, hey, you recirculate your water because Florence, Texas doesn't have enough. And by the way, why can't we do a study? Because there are wells in West Williamson County, Northwest, that are turning into sulfur. And you see quarries all around them. Why can't we have that? Why can't we say, why can't there be a survey just to check the science that you were talking about, to make sure it's accurate on the cumulative effect? And let's don't make it just because of the piece of equipment for which you got the permit on, but the entire operation.
Change the law.
Is that too much to ask? And let's talk about reclamation. I don't want you to collapse the walls. That's too damn expensive. This is a hill country. Lady Bird gave us our flowers. She added to God's creation here. And we love it that people come all the way from all over the United States to see our bluebonnets, our Indian paintbrushes, and our daisies. If you're going to be here and you're going to be a quarry, put a little bit more distance on the road which people travel. Put your piles on the other side. Do something. Plant some flowers. How about this? How about just have a nice looking berm? When you do close it on reclamation, so the buses don't drive over when they have an issue on a school bus. And by the way, that happened, Jeff, about 30 years ago? And yes, when we dig those holes in East Texas, we love good ponds, especially if you're going to stock the daggum things. So we don't want you to collapse those. We want water in that. But there's no water in Florence. And when you're out there, how about this? Let's just consider how much a reclamation bond costs. We have a lot of information on 24 states. It costs anywhere from $400 an acre to $1,000 an acre, and if there is a significant operation, it may be that they're going to allow you to pay $20,000 overall for a statewide permit. Is that asking too much when you're making a 33% profit margin?
So someone here asked, are there other states that are doing things better? Who are they and what are they doing?
All 49 of them.
That's pretty funny. That's why Texas is open for business. We got a lot of product here. And you know what? We'd like them to come get it. We just like them to do it wisely.
Yeah, let me throw something in here, Terry.
Not against this.
I'm going to kind of, speak for the people here because first and foremost, we don't want to be doing this. I look out here and I see people that have thousands, hundreds of thousands of hours collectively of research that we've done over the last couple of years, and oppositions having protests, going to the Capitol. We don't. All of us are volunteers. We all have real jobs. You know, this has become my hobby. Isn't that fun? You know, we don't want to be doing this. And to me, it makes sense for the industry to listen to what people are saying. You don't need contested hearings. You don't need extensions of 2 years, 3 years, however long it takes for the legal system to work its way through before you begin operations. There are things that we believe that you can do proactively that will help you be moving into neighborhoods. Terry's already commented, moving off the road. In reality, you said that strict process that they do on a standard permit. My assertion of the standard permit is that if you can put your rock crusher within that 440-yard diameter circle, you can go anywhere and do anything that you want to. And that's the way we all perceive it, because it's the fact. And this is a perfect example at Dumblehorn. Who would have ever dreamed that someone from out of state would come in and on 286 acres take advantage of a law that, although it is a law, it doesn't necessarily make it right, in my mind. And they don't, whatever they say about how they care for the community and they're going to work for the community, or we're going to, we're going to dig a hole before we put our rock, we're going to do everything. Regardless, their lives have changed forever. And I don't think you, nor anyone on this panel will want that to happen to them. I mean, there's things that and once again, that's what I came here tonight, is to try to see if, the beginning of this dialogue, there are things. We wonder why, when you insure, and on the permitting process, the operator themselves, they ensure that they promise. There's nobody watching them, but we promise we're going to be good aggregate operators. I've asked several of them then, why would you have any issue with placing air monitors within your system, on your site? Nobody wants to answer. So, if I'm telling you I promise that I'm going to keep your air clean, I mean, I should be able to just load one up and stick it out there right now. I mean, they may cost some money, but you can take all that heat off of them.
Can I ask Jill that question? Because I mean,
She obviously operated one. Did you monitor the air, and are there things that others can do that could help that?
And I agree. It's not hard to do the right thing. I didn't specifically monitor air at the time when I was mining. Some of the things, I'll give you some examples of some of the things I was doing, because I think that it's I think you're interested in it. I think y'all are worried about truck traffic, dust, noise, blasting frequency. Those are very legitimate concerns. And for instance, I'm going to try to keep this kind of basic, but backup alarms are irritating. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, they're irritating. And one of the things that can be done, whether it's a requirement or not, it certainly can be done, is you switch out the backup alarms that beep and you install the ones that quack like a duck, and it's less irritating. Sound, we did monitor for sound. We monitored. I put a noise monitor in several people's yards, making sure we weren't being too loud. I mean, we are crushing rock. It's not exactly silent, but there are things you can do, and you can do them voluntarily if it's not a law. And frankly, I don't think it needs to be a law if you're a responsible operator. Blasting, we send text message every time someone's gonna blast. You can get a text notification. At least you know it's coming. Does that make it any less invasive? Maybe not, but maybe you know it's coming. But there are things that can be done to control the blasting, and they're very standard for any reputable operator. If you have someone out there, frankly, that's blasting and it is over the top intrusive to you, something's not right. Okay, and there's a way to look into that fairly easily.
Can you explain that?
Yes. So I think there's someone in the crowd from Vibertech here tonight. So most responsible operators, or most quality operators, use a third party for their blasting and their monitoring on their blasting. I don't encourage anyone to do their own blasting. I think you need an expert for every type of your operation. And so that can be monitored for the vibration impacts. Something as simple, if you can, which I think you can. If it's a really cloudy day, maybe you hold off on that blast a little bit, because when it's really cloudy, the vibration doesn't have anywhere to go as much as if it's a clear day, things like that. Or there's some extreme examples that people can implement of controlling your blasting schedule. You know, if you can not blast at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning when folks are getting ready to go to church, let's not blast on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock.
I will tell you. Can I tell you?
The question I posed, the air monitors. What are your thoughts on those? Why, if you're saying you're not going to, why would you not?
Well, I liked your point that if I think I'm doing a good job, I'm not afraid to be regulated. Come inspect me every day if you want to. If I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm following the rules that are in place, and then I'm going above and beyond on the ones that I know that I can, I don't see a problem with it. It hasn't been standard, and one of my comments in the article was, kind of the previous mining days, in my personal opinion, are gone. This is a different environment. We have more people, we have more developments, we have, the rock is where it is, and so while a quarry may come in next to a neighborhood, if it's really truly committed to doing a good job, it's not afraid to be regulated, and it's not afraid of increased regulations. That might not necessarily like it, but it's not afraid. So, I think that's a good point. I think a lot of further discussion needs to be done. I get people asking me all the time about air monitors. I personally, I think there's some research that needs to be done on those. I think it's a good idea. I think it's important for you. I think it's important for our workers, if I'm an operator.
Well, you know how to make may I say? Yes, just real quickly, but by them declining to do so, it gives the message that we have no intention whatsoever of remaining within compliance, pure and simple. And for us to feel comfortable that the air we breathe is safe, it just makes common sense to do that. Because once again, things like this that could be done on a voluntary basis that would stop all this. It would stop the lawsuits. Not necessarily every one of them, but, as Terry said, moving back away from the road, moving back away from people, increase the setbacks, or just, use common sense that, that this is going to cause me a problem, and they are going to hate me forever, look at it from a realistic and a human standpoint, and the guys that you represent. And that's what we're asking here. It's that, it's a long time to session, it's a long time to session, but, help us out here. Help us help you, and the industry deal. Tell these guys, and I'll never, 5 times I asked him, will you please put air monitors around the quarry at Double Horn? First time he looked at the monitor at TCEQ like a deer in the headlights. Like, I have to answer that. And then he declined to answer 4 times, no comment. And once again, that makes the men look guilty, pure and simple.
And Mr. Perkins, have you been to a TCEQ? Okay. How long has it been since you've been to one?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
There's one coming up in a couple of weeks.
It really is embarrassing. Being affiliated with the state, it's embarrassing. At the end of the day, they bring in their lawyer and they sit there and say, we don't have to answer that. We don't have to, because this is only, and the only reason why I bring that up is because you mentioned, hey, there are hearings, public hearings, and so forth like that. The fact of the matter is it only has to do with the air permit and the water runoff. It does cover that. But anything else that concerns these people, what we're talking about, is literally controlled by this industry. They have a choice. They have a choice to be good neighbors. And I want to tell you the good news is, because I am a very optimistic guy, I really am. The good news is the industry that are moving in and so forth. They're sitting down with us. They're sitting down with the county judge. By the way, the county judge was part of that 2005 committee, Judge James Oakley. He signed it, and he'll tell you how much of it was enacted. He lives right here. Y'all know Judge Oakley, right? Good man. The industry, if they will do more than just buy the back page of the chamber circular that says, we're here in your industry, contributing to our community, but actually do that, I think there would be a significant difference. However, when you're looking at the situation of Marble Falls, Texas, where they invested millions of dollars because we are a retirement area to get a hospital, Baylor, Scott, and White here, millions of dollars of infrastructure. And as soon as the infrastructure is going up, is an opportunity for the quarries to move in and buy along that so they can tap into the water or whatever it may be. The curb cut. When you look at Williamson County, everybody was so excited about Ronald Reagan. You know, that's extension of 183. Look at the number of trucks. It was like an open venue for all the quarries to come in. Right off Ronald Reagan, which was supposed to be in planned development. When you look at Marble Falls, over 8,000 acres near a community, it's only 10,131. There's a point where saturation will ruin lives. Not only of them living there, but there are opportunities for people to come from all over the United States to our number one industry, which is tourism. Which is also because we don't have the right legislation in place or an agency to enforce or investigate, that our water, even though we have surface water here, believe it or not, out at Smithwick and so forth, they have to truck their water in. And the problem is when they have very little water and they have mining right there and they do a water sample test and it's now corrupt, it's an issue. It takes good partners and the industry partners, because the legislature's not going to do it for you right now. We're going to go another round of session. I hope that I didn't piss enough people off here that's part of the industry that's going to go and look and find a competitor for me. They probably are. But that's quite all right, because I'm not going to worry about that. At the end of the day, we're going to keep tackling this issue. And when I said that the governor is very interested, I mean that. When I said the speaker is interested, well, you're going to get the same firsthand. He's going to be here on October 14th. Come see him. It's going to be out at Judge Kidhill's house. Those are the two I can speak for in terms of our state leadership. And for those in Double Horn, I'm sorry that a New York company was able to loophole our Adjutant General's office. I doubt it very seriously Kim Paxson even knows. Because after all, we're still a little rural, right? And it was rural that carried the statewide elections only by 4.9%, right? I'm sure he would listen. So we'll try to get him out here as well.
I think this is a good opportunity to have each of the panelists just give a quick closing remark, if that's okay. I know we did not get to all of your questions, and I apologize. We tried to keep it a lively conversation, but just quick final comments from everyone.
I'm first.
Well, do you want to say something else? Or?
Yeah, I'll say something.
About the first final?
Hey, thank y'all for coming out. By the way, you don't have more important things to do. This is important, isn't it? This is your lives. And I know it. I'm very thankful for Ms. Perkins coming out, Taka. I appreciate that. Tony, thank you for doing this story. It was such a surprise when I got the call. Thank you. Jill, thank you so much for going out there and trying to intermediate between the industry and our communities. All that you have to say is superb and excellent. I really appreciate that. And you young lady, welcome to the Hill Country. We hope that we can preserve it. God bless you.
I also want to thank everybody. This has been something that, this story that Tony was able to get out, this has been a major goal for our organization or our group, whatever it is, the education of the people as to the realities of the industry. And certainly, we all know that we have to have it. I personally, I look forward to the day. Right now, my hands are tied. When I buy base materials or whatever, they're all acting the same way. I hope with changes that someday I have the opportunity to choose a contractor that is doing the right thing and trying to be a true good neighbor. And if it costs me $1,000 more to do a project because I'm shopping with him, I'm going to make sure he knows I'm shopping with him due to that fact. And I have a list that I would love, to get to y'all of things that I hear all the time. And it's the same things that it should be simple. Some simple things that we believe could happen and change the whole perspective. And then, the guys that go out there and would do these things voluntarily before laws are ever and they do it, they're the ones that can set a precedent, and they're going to look like they're going to shine, man. They're going to look, they're going to look like the good guys. Do the things that people do not always against any situation where quarries coming in. Make it different. Okay.
Well, thank you. I think that deserves a bit of a round of applause. Go ahead. Yeah. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. This is tough, in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of difference of opinion, there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of emotion, and I understand that. And I want to make sure that I am sincere in wanting to understand that and wanting to try to figure out ways where we can voluntarily and we can proactively do things that are going to make this process better. I believe there are some good things that are already in place, and I think it's important to share those things. But I think this is a beginning, or I wouldn't say the beginning, but this is a critical part of this dialogue process that's going to continue. And I will say on behalf of our organization, we want to continue to have this dialogue because I think there are going to be some good things that are going to come out as a result of that. And it always ends up better when you can sit down and talk face to face. That always creates the better outcome. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. I put my faith in that. And I know that we'll get there. I know we will get there. I know we will get there. we will get there. But I want to thank Tony as well for all the work that he has done. Again, he's put a lot of time. We have spent a lot of time on the phone. He's done an excellent job of pulling all this information together. And Tony, I just want to say thank you for what you've done. Again, great job. Thank you.
Well, I certainly want to thank everyone for coming, and Tony's work was just excellent, getting this together, and hopefully it'll continue on. And I want to encourage you guys, a couple of things I learned the hard way. First of all, it's never too early to communicate. If you're an operator, to communicate with your neighbors, or the neighbors to reach out to an operator if they know about it, which I understand you didn't. And it's also never too late to communicate. So I think a lot of positive communication can occur if the operator is willing, and any responsible operator these days is. Our industry, that industry is definitely, they know they need to communicate. And I know a lot of you feel like you're in a mess. I'm next to a quarry, and what am I going to do? And I encourage you to take that mess you think you're in and let it be your message, which you guys have done, and you're doing a good job at it. And don't give up on it. And I think the operator should respect that and encourage you to just communicate with them as best as you can. Stay on them. Get help if you need it. Call me if you want some advice. I'd love to share some of my mistakes that I made, and hold them to a high standard. They're good companies. They know, and most of them. There are bad apples. We talked about that, but you can communicate. And don't give up. I know it's frustrating, and it's frustrating on the other side too. And if we can just continue to work together, I think there's a lot of good that can come from it. And like I said, and what I firmly believe, the former days of mining are kind of gone. I think it's a new generation, a new era, and you've got to think outside the box. You got to do more than what's required, and you have a responsibility to communicate, both parties. So, keep your chin up and just hang in there. I think you've got some good leadership up here that's willing to take this thing to a different level and actually get something done. So thanks for getting this going.
I too want to thank everybody for coming tonight and thank our esteemed panel. And I'll just say this in closing. Issues like this are why we need a strong local press. So I just want to continue to invite you to support your local media and stay engaged on issues like this.
I second that. You don't have to watch our television station to see what happens with our own industry. And so we appreciate you all taking the time out of your schedules, to be here for events like this so that we can further what we do. We live in these communities. We hear you. Call us. Let us know what you want to see on our airwaves, in the newspaper. We can't do this without you. And so thank you for being here. You have something else?
Just one thing. What I want to see on there is when y'all follow up that the industry has actually taken steps to make our world a better place. And that's another new good story.
Well, we will continue to follow this and many of our other investigations. So thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.